The stars stretched endlessly before the viewport of the horizon's edge, as Captain Jake Morrison reviewed the diplomatic protocols for the third time that day. His crew had trained for 6 months for this moment, humanity's first official meeting with the Zelthari Empire. The Galactic Council had assured Earth that this would be a peaceful exchange, a chance for the newest species to prove they belonged among the stars. Jake walked through the corridors of his ship, nodding to crew members who snapped to attention. His pilot, Lisa Grant, was running final checks on the navigation systems. In engineering, Danny Walsh hummed while calibrating the power distribution networks. Dr. Sophie Turner organized medical supplies in the bay, though she doubted they would need them. Greg Hamilton stood at his tactical station, monitoring the approach vectors of their 2 escort ships. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Council for 8 months. Earth was classified as a Class 12 deathworld, a planet so dangerous that most species wondered how humans had survived long enough to develop space travel. The gravity was crushing by galactic standards, the weather unpredictable and violent, and the entire ecosystem seemed designed to kill anything that moved. Other species came from gentler worlds with stable climates and peaceful herbivores. The Zelthari were different. They were reptilian, standing nearly 8 feet tall with scales that shimmered like oil on water. Their empire controlled vast territories in the outer rim, and they had a reputation for being aggressive traders and skilled warriors. The Council had suggested this meeting to establish trade routes and resource-sharing agreements. Jake hoped it would go smoothly. When the Zelthari flagship appeared on their sensors, it was massive, easily 3 times the size of the horizon's edge. 2 more warships flanked it, their weapon systems clearly visible even from a distance. Lisa glanced at Jake with concern, but he kept his expression neutral. This was supposed to be a diplomatic mission. The weapons were probably just standard protocol. The Zelthari ambassador, a towering figure named Vexthor, appeared on the view screen. His eyes were cold and calculating, studying Jake the way a predator might examine prey. The translation systems hummed as Vexthor began speaking in his native language, which came through as heavily accented but understandable English. "So these are the deathworlders," Vexthor said, his tone dripping with contempt. "I expected something more impressive. You look soft, Captain. Your species has been fortunate to survive this long on such a hostile planet, but fortune does not make you strong." Jake felt his jaw tighten but maintained his diplomatic composure. "Ambassador Vexthor, we come in peace to discuss mutually beneficial arrangements between our peoples. Earth is prepared to offer technology and resources in exchange for hyperspace navigation data and medical knowledge." Vexthor laughed, a harsh sound that made several crew members flinch. "You misunderstand your position, human. We did not come here to negotiate. We came to inform you of new reality. The 7 systems between your Earth and our territory now belong to the Zelthari Empire. You will withdraw any claims and surrender mining operations immediately." The bridge went silent. Jake stood slowly from his command chair, his voice steady but hard. "Those systems were granted to humanity by the Galactic Council. We have established colonies and research stations. We will not abandon them." "Then you are fools," Vexthor said. "The Council is weak. They admitted you because they felt pity for a species struggling to leave their dangerous little world. But pity does not grant rights. Power grants rights and you have none." Greg Hamilton's tactical board suddenly lit up with warnings. "Captain, they're charging weapons. Raise shields." Jake barked, but it was already too late. The Zelthari warships opened fire without another word. Energy beams tore through space, slamming into the nearest escort ship. The vessel's shields flared bright and then shattered. A second volley punched through the hull, and the ship exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the viewport. "Evasive maneuvers," Jake shouted. Lisa's hands flew across her controls, throwing the horizon's edge into a hard turn that made the artificial gravity strain. The second escort ship returned fire, its missiles streaking toward the Zelthari flagship. Most were intercepted by point defense systems, but 2 got through, scarring the massive ship's shields. The Zelthari response was brutal. All 3 warships focused fire on the second escort, overwhelming its defenses in seconds. Jake watched in horror as another of his ships died, taking 60 crew members with it. The horizon's edge was alone now, facing an enemy that clearly had no interest in talking. "Danny, I need more power to shields," Jake called into the comm system. "Working on it, Captain." Danny's voice came back, strained but focused. But we're not built for this kind of fight. Jake knew that. The Horizon's Edge was an exploration vessel with minimal weapons. They had been sent here for diplomacy, not war. But the Zelthari had made their choice, and now humans had to survive it. Greg launched everything they had, missiles and kinetic rounds that hammered against the Zelthari shields. It was like throwing rocks at a mountain. The enemy ships barely slowed their advance. Energy beams raked across the Horizon's Edge, and the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as systems failed across multiple decks. Hull breach on Deck 3. Sophie's voice came through, urgent but controlled. "I'm sealing the section now." Jake's mind raced through options. They couldn't fight, and they couldn't outrun the Zelthari ships, but maybe they could survive long enough to escape. "Lisa, plot a course through that debris field from our escort ships. Make it erratic. That's insane, Captain. One wrong move and we'll tear ourselves apart. Do it anyway." Lisa nodded and pushed the ship into the expanding cloud of wreckage. The Horizon's Edge weaved through twisted metal and frozen bodies, using the debris as cover. The Zelthari followed, their larger ships less maneuverable. Greg timed it perfectly, launching their last missiles just as they cleared the debris field. The missiles detonated inside the cloud, turning it into an expanding wall of shrapnel. One Zelthari warship took the full brunt, its shields failing as thousands of metal fragments tore into its hull at high velocity. The ship listed to one side, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. It wasn't destroyed, but it was out of the fight. Now, Lisa. Maximum speed. The Horizon's Edge leaped forward, its engines screaming as they pushed past safe limits. The remaining Zelthari ships gave chase, but Danny had redirected power from life support and artificial gravity to the engines. They were faster now, just barely fast enough. Energy beams flashed past them, missing by meters, then kilometers. After 20 minutes of hard running, they finally lost their pursuers. Jake slumped in his chair, the adrenaline draining from his body. Around him, his crew began assessing the damage. They had lost 2 ships and nearly 120 people. The Horizon's Edge itself was barely functional, with critical systems damaged or destroyed. "Set course for Earth," Jake said quietly, "and send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we've made first contact with the Zelthari Empire." He paused, his voice hardening. "Tell them it's war." As the battered ship limped toward home, Jake stared at the stars and thought about Vexthor's words. The ambassador had called humans soft, said they had no power. Jake touched the memorial display on his console, where the names of the dead were already being recorded. The Zelthari had no idea what they had just started. They thought humanity was weak because Earth was dangerous. They didn't understand that Earth's dangers had forged something the galaxy had never seen before: survivors who refused to quit, fighters who thrived in chaos, apex predators who were about to remind the universe why you don't pick fights with deathworlders. The war had begun, and humanity was coming. The emergency broadcast reached every corner of Earth simultaneously. President Marcus Reeves stood before the cameras in the United Nations Assembly Hall, his face grave but determined. Behind him, representatives from every nation sat in tense silence as he delivered the news that would change humanity's future forever. "Citizens of Earth," Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. "3 days ago, our diplomatic mission to the Zelthari Empire was attacked without provocation. 2 of our ships were destroyed. 120 of our people are dead. The Zelthari ambassador has issued an ultimatum, demanding we surrender 7 star systems that rightfully belong to humanity. We have 30 days to comply, or they promise total war." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle across the planet. Then his expression hardened, and something fierce blazed in his eyes. "I stand before you today to say that humanity will not surrender. Not to the Zelthari, not to anyone. We have spent our entire existence fighting to survive on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We did not crawl out of Earth's gravity well just to bow before the first bully we met among the stars." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across Earth, in every city and town, people rallied to the call. The Zelthari had made a fatal miscalculation. They thought humans would be afraid. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity unified under one banner: the will to fight for survival at any cost. Fleet Admiral Karen Pierce took command of Earth's military response from the orbital defense station above North America. She was a career officer who had spent 40 years in space, first as a pilot, then as a ship captain, and finally as the commander of humanity's small but growing fleet. Now she faced the greatest challenge of her life, preparing to defend Earth against an enemy with superior numbers and technology. In the massive shipyards orbiting the moon, Commander Ryan Blake coordinated the retrofit of every available vessel. Cargo haulers were fitted with missile pods. Colony ships received armor plating and shield generators. Even civilian pleasure craft were armed with whatever weapons could be mounted to their hulls. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't standard military procedure, but humans had always been good at improvising. Ryan walked through the construction bay where the new battleship Defiant was being completed ahead of schedule. Thousands of workers moved like ants across the massive vessel, welding armor, installing weapons, and running system checks. The ship was a testament to human engineering, combining Earth's industrial might with alien technology they had studied and improved upon. "How long until she's ready?" Ryan asked the chief engineer, a brilliant woman named Patricia Cole who had designed most of the Defiant systems. Patricia wiped grease from her hands and grinned. "Officially, 3 weeks. Realistically, she'll fly in 10 days and she'll fly angry. I've installed railguns along the spine, missile batteries that would make a Zelthari cruiser jealous, and point defense systems that can track 1,000 targets simultaneously. But that's not the best part." "What's the best part?" "Nuclear missiles. 50 of them. The Galactic Council banned them centuries ago because they consider them barbaric. But we're not part of that treaty yet, and right now I don't care what the Council thinks. These weapons will punch through shields that laugh at energy beams." Ryan nodded approvingly. The galaxy thought human weapons were primitive because they relied on kinetic force and explosive power, rather than pure energy. What they didn't understand was that sometimes a big rock moving really fast was more effective than a laser. Humanity had spent millennia perfecting the art of hitting things hard, and now they would show the Zelthari what that meant. At a military base in North America, Lieutenant Amy Rogers drilled her special operations team through boarding scenarios. They practiced breaching simulated alien vessels, moving through zero-gravity environments and engaging enemy forces in close quarters. Most galactic species avoided hand-to-hand combat because their bodies were fragile compared to the harsh conditions of their worlds. Humans were different. Earth had made them tough, and their history had made them skilled at violence. Sergeant Victor Hayes watched his soldiers with pride. They were young, most of them, but they moved with confidence and precision. "Remember," he called out during a break in training, "the Zelthari are bigger and stronger than us individually, but we're faster, meaner, and a hell of a lot more creative. When we board their ships, we fight dirty, use the environment, exploit their weaknesses, make them afraid of the dark because that's where we live." The soldiers nodded, their faces set with determination. They weren't fighting for conquest or glory. They were fighting because someone had attacked their home, killed their people, and threatened their families. That made them dangerous in a way the Zelthari couldn't comprehend. In a secure intelligence facility, Nathan Cruz analyzed intercepted Zelthari communications. What he found was disturbing. The Empire wasn't just preparing to attack Earth. They were rallying allies, spreading propaganda that painted humans as a dangerous infection that needed to be cleansed from the galaxy before they could spread. 3 other species had already pledged ships to the Zelthari cause. Nathan brought his findings to Fleet Admiral Karen Pierce during a strategy meeting. "We're not just facing the Zelthari," he explained, displaying the intelligence on a holographic screen. "The Vral, the Delari, and the Korthan have all committed forces. We're looking at a combined fleet of at least 200 warships, maybe more." Karen studied the data with a calm that impressed everyone in the room. "Then we'll destroy 200 warships. Ryan, how many vessels can we field?" 43 combat-ready ships," Ryan answered. "Another 20 that can fight but probably shouldn't. We're outnumbered 5 to 1, maybe worse." "Good." Everyone stared at her. "Good?" Ryan repeated. Karen smiled grimly. "Throughout human history, we've done our best work when the odds were impossible. Marathon, Thermopylae, Britain during the Blitz, Stalingrad. We're not just fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for our survival as a species. That makes us more dangerous than any fleet in the galaxy." She turned to address the room. "The Zelthari think they're coming to Earth to force a surrender. Instead, they're flying into a trap. We're going to turn our solar system into a killing field. We're going to use every dirty trick, every cheap shot, every advantage we can create. And when it's over, the galaxy is going to learn what happens when you pick a fight with deathworlders." Dr. Helen Price, the head of Earth's research division, raised her hand. Admiral, I've been studying the sensor data from the Horizon's Edge encounter. The Zelthari shields are strong against energy weapons, but they're not designed for kinetic impacts. Our missiles did more damage in one hit than their energy beams did in sustained fire. Exploit it, Karen ordered. Every ship gets kinetic weapons. Railguns, missiles, even old-fashioned explosive shells if we have to. We play to our strengths, not theirs. Over the next 25 days, Earth transformed. Factories that built consumer goods retooled to produce weapons and ammunition. Scientists who studied peaceful applications of technology now designed instruments of war. Civilian volunteers flooded recruitment centers, overwhelming the military's ability to process them all. The planet unified in a way it never had before, setting aside old conflicts and rivalries to face a common enemy. Jake Morrison, recovered from his injuries, spent his time debriefing intelligence officers and training new captains on Zelthari tactics. He couldn't shake the memory of watching his escort ships die, of hearing the screams over the comm as people he knew were vaporized in an instant. That memory fueled him, kept him working 18-hour days without complaint. Lisa Grant, Danny Walsh, Sophie Turner, and Greg Hamilton all received new assignments. Lisa would pilot one of the new interceptor squadrons. Danny joined Patricia Cole's engineering team. Sophie organized triage centers across the fleet. Greg took command of a destroyer that had been rushed into service. As the deadline approached, humanity was as ready as they could be. The fleet gathered in formation around Earth, a wall of steel and determination that refused to yield. Admiral Karen Pierce stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking at the stars where their enemies would soon appear. All ships, this is Admiral Pierce, she broadcast across the fleet. In a few hours, the Zelthari will arrive expecting to find us beaten and afraid. Instead, they're going to find out why Earth is called a deathworld. They're going to learn that humans don't surrender, we don't retreat, and we sure as hell don't forget. Today we defend our home. Tomorrow we take the fight to them. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who can't fight but is counting on us to stand our ground. The response came back from 43 ships simultaneously. For Earth, Nathan Cruz picked up a massive energy spike on the edge of the solar system. Admiral, they're here. Multiple hyperspace exits detected, counting 217 enemy vessels. Karen Pierce smiled coldly. All ships, battle stations. Let's show them what happens when you anger the apex predators of the galaxy. Welcome to Earth, you bastards. This is where your empire dies. The Zelthari fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of locusts, their ships gleaming in the distant sunlight. Ambassador Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident in the overwhelming force he commanded. 217 warships against Earth's pitiful defense. This would be over in hours, perhaps less. The humans would see their fleet destroyed and surrender before their planet was bombarded into submission. Advance on the human homeworld, Vexthor ordered. Destroy any ship that resists. Prepare landing forces to occupy their major cities. Today, the deathworlders learn their place. The fleet began its approach, expecting to encounter scattered resistance near Earth's orbital stations. Instead, the first wave ran straight into the asteroid belt, which had been suspiciously quiet on their sensors. That was because Ryan Blake and Patricia Cole had spent 3 weeks turning thousands of asteroids into mines. The trap was simple, but devastating. As the Zelthari vanguard entered the belt, precisely timed explosives detonated across hundreds of rocks, sending them tumbling into the fleet's path. The asteroids had been fitted with small thrusters, allowing them to adjust course and accelerate. Each rock weighed thousands of tons and moved at speeds that made them essentially unstoppable. The first impacts caught the Zelthari completely off guard. Their shields were designed to disperse energy beams across their surface, but a solid object with that much momentum simply punched through. A 5-ton rock traveling at 15 kilometers per second hit a Zelthari cruiser amidships, tearing through shields, armor, and hull like paper. The ship broke in half, atmosphere and crew venting into space. Evasive action, Vexthor screamed as his sensors lit up with thousands of incoming projectiles. But capital ships couldn't dodge that fast. All across the vanguard, asteroids slammed into vessels with catastrophic results. Shields flared and died. Hulls crumpled. Ships exploded or went dark, tumbling helplessly through space. The Zelthari fleet scattered in panic, trying to avoid the killing field. That's when the human fleet struck. Admiral Karen Pierce had positioned her ships behind the outer planets, using their gravity to mask her signatures. Now she ordered them forward at maximum speed. All ships open fire. Target their command vessels first. Make every shot count. The Defiant led the charge, its railguns spitting projectiles at a rate that overwhelmed enemy point defense. Each slug was a depleted uranium rod weighing 10 kilograms, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. When they hit, they released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. Patricia Cole's engineering had worked perfectly. The Zelthari shields that laughed at laser fire shattered under kinetic bombardment. Jake Morrison piloted a fighter alongside Lisa Grant and 50 other human pilots. They dove into the enemy formation like hawks among pigeons, their smaller ships more maneuverable than anything the Zelthari flew. Jake's targeting computer locked onto an enemy destroyer and he released his payload of missiles. The Zelthari tried to intercept them, but human missiles were designed to be unpredictable, weaving and juking as they approached. 4 missiles got through, slamming into the destroyer's engines. The ship listed to one side as secondary explosions tore through its interior. Jake didn't wait to watch it die. He was already banking toward his next target, Lisa covering his flank as enemy fire filled the space around them. The space battle became a chaotic mess, exactly the kind of fight humans excelled at. While the Zelthari tried to maintain formation and coordinate their attacks, human ships darted in and out, striking hard and breaking away before the enemy could respond effectively. It was guerrilla warfare in 3 dimensions, and the aliens had never faced anything like it. Owen Carter, one of the most aggressive pilots in the fleet, flew his fighter straight down the length of a Zelthari battleship, firing the entire way. His weapons barely scratched the massive vessel's armor, but that wasn't the point. He was drawing fire, forcing the battleship to focus on him while Maria Santos led a bombing run against its shield generators. When those exploded, the battleship was suddenly vulnerable. Greg Hamilton, commanding the destroyer Swift Justice, took full advantage. His ship's main cannon fired a single slug that traveled the entire length of the now unshielded battleship, entering through the bow and exiting through the stern. The enemy vessel came apart in a series of explosions that lit up the battlefield, but the humans were taking losses too. The Zelthari had numbers on their side, and once they recovered from their initial shock, they began pressing their advantage. Energy beams crisscrossed space, finding human vessels and burning through their armor. 3 destroyers died in the first hour. A cruiser called the Resolute took a direct hit to its reactor and vanished in a blinding flash. On the Defiance bridge, Karen Pierce watched the tactical display with cold calculation. They were hurting the enemy badly, but not badly enough. The Zelthari were pushing through, accepting terrible losses to reach Earth. If they got close enough to bombard the planet, all of this would be for nothing. "Danny," Karen said into her comm, "I need you to give me everything the engines have. I don't care if it burns them out. We need to get between that enemy battle group and Earth." Down in engineering, Danny Walsh was already working miracles, keeping systems running that should have failed 10 minutes ago. "Admiral, if I push the engines any harder, we'll be flying a bomb, not a ship. Then we'll be a bomb. Do it." The Defiant surged forward, its engines screaming as they exceeded every safety limit. Karen aimed her ship at the largest concentration of enemy vessels, the ones trying to break through toward Earth. "All batteries. Continuous fire. Don't stop shooting until we're out of ammunition or dead." The battleship became a flying fortress, its weapons firing in all directions. Railguns hammered enemy ships. Missiles streaked out in waves. Point defense systems shredded incoming fire. The Defiant took hit after hit, armor peeling away, systems failing, but it didn't stop. It couldn't stop. On Earth, the Zelthari had managed to land forces in 3 locations. Sergeant Victor Hayes and Lieutenant Amy Rogers led the ground defense in the ruins of what had been a peaceful city. The Zelthari soldiers were 8 feet tall, stronger than humans and equipped with advanced armor and weapons. They should have dominated the battlefield. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. The humans had turned the entire city into a trap. Buildings were rigged with explosives. Streets were mined. Every window potentially hid a sniper. The Zelthari, trained for open warfare, found themselves fighting an enemy that struck from shadows and vanished before they could respond. Victor's squad ambushed a Zelthari patrol in a narrow street. The aliens tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for long-range engagements. In the cramped urban environment, humans with shotguns and grenades had the advantage. The patrol was wiped out in seconds, the soldiers moving on before reinforcements could arrive. Amy coordinated the defense from a command post deep underground. She watched dozens of screens showing feeds from throughout the city. Every time the Zelthari concentrated forces, she directed human units to hit them from unexpected angles. Every time they tried to advance, they found their path blocked or collapsed. The aliens were learning a hard truth that Earth's own history had taught many times. Technology doesn't matter much when you're fighting people on their home ground. People who know every building and street. People who have nothing left to lose. In orbit, the space battle reached its climax. The Zelthari flagship, battered but still functional, made a final push toward Earth. Vexthor was screaming orders, demanding his fleet press forward regardless of casualties. They had come too far to retreat now. The deathworlders would submit or die. Ryan Blake, watching from the orbital defense station, made a decision. He opened a channel to the Defiant. "Admiral Pierce, I'm showing massive damage to your ship. You need to fall back." Karen looked around her bridge. Half her crew was dead or wounded. Sophie Turner worked frantically in medical, trying to save people faster than they died. The ship was barely holding together, and another direct hit would finish them. She looked at the tactical display, at the enemy flagship pushing closer to Earth. "Negative," she said calmly. "I'm right where I need to be. Ryan, get ready to take command of the fleet. Tell the President that Earth is in good hands." Before Ryan could respond, Karen cut the channel. She turned to her helmsman. "Full speed ahead. Ram the flagship. Admiral will be killed." "Yes, but we'll take them with us. All hands abandon ship. You have 2 minutes to get to escape pods." "That's an order." The bridge crew hesitated, then began moving. Danny Walsh appeared on the comm screen. "Karen, you can't do this alone." "I'm staying with the ship. Someone needs to keep the engines running." Sophie's voice came next. "I'm not leaving wounded behind. I'm staying too." One by one, the bridge officers made the same choice. They would see this through to the end. Karen felt pride swell in her chest even as tears stung her eyes. This was humanity. Not individuals, but something greater. A species that refused to quit even when death was certain. The Defiant accelerated toward the Zelthari flagship, which finally realized the danger and tried to turn away. But the human ship was faster, its dying engines pushing it forward with everything they had left. The news of Earth's victory spread through the galaxy like wildfire, and the reaction was shock followed by disbelief. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions where representatives argued about what the human success meant. Some species, like the peaceful Centauri and the ancient Eldurians, offered congratulations and suggested opening diplomatic channels. Others, those aligned with the Zelthari or simply fearful of what humanity might become, pushed for sanctions or even expulsion from the Council. President Marcus Reeves addressed both Earth and the galaxy in a broadcast that would be remembered for generations. He stood in the ruins of a city that had been bombed during the invasion, surrounded by rubble and recovery teams pulling survivors from collapsed buildings. His voice was tired but firm. "We did not seek this war. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, partners, and teachers. Instead, we found enemies who saw our desire for peace as weakness. They were wrong, but now we face a choice. We can sit here licking our wounds and hoping they don't come back, or we can make sure they never have the chance." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "The Zelthari Empire started this war with an unprovoked attack. They killed our people. They tried to conquer our world. And then they ran home thinking distance would protect them. It won't. Humanity is coming for them. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but to end this threat permanently. We will accept surrender. We will show mercy. But we will not stop until the war is over." The offensive began within 2 weeks of the Battle of Terra. Ryan Blake, promoted to admiral after Karen Pierce's death, organized the human fleet into 3 strike groups. Each would hit different targets simultaneously, stretching Zelthari defenses thin and preventing them from concentrating their remaining forces. Jake Morrison received command of the new carrier Retribution, a massive vessel built from the salvaged remains of 3 destroyed ships. It was an ugly thing, all sharp angles and mismatched armor plating, but it carried more firepower than any ship humanity had ever built. His crew was a mix of veterans from the horizon's edge and new recruits eager to prove themselves. The Retribution's first target was a Zelthari supply depot in a system called Veldor. Intelligence from Nathan Cruz indicated it was a critical logistics hub, feeding equipment and ammunition to 3 different fleet bases. Destroy it, and the enemy's ability to sustain military operations would be severely compromised. Jake stood on his bridge as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Lisa Grant, now his chief pilot, coordinated the fighter wings. Danny Walsh had personally overseen the Retribution's engines and promised they would run perfectly. Greg Hamilton commanded the ship's tactical systems, his eyes scanning the sensor displays for threats. Sensors show 12 warships guarding the depot, Greg reported. 2 heavy cruisers, the rest destroyers and frigates. They're in defensive formation around the supply station. Standard Zelthari doctrine, Jake observed. They think superior firepower in a fixed position makes them safe. Let's show them why that's a bad assumption. Lisa, launch all fighters. Greg, target those cruisers with our long-range missiles. Let's see if we can shake them up before we close to gun range. The Retribution released a swarm of fighters that immediately spread out, making themselves difficult targets. Jake's missiles followed, 24 of them streaking toward the enemy formation. The Zelthari responded predictably, their point defense systems focusing on the incoming missiles, while their ships maneuvered to intercept the fighters. That's when the human pilots showed why they were among the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. They didn't engage directly. Instead, they split into small groups and attacked from multiple vectors, forcing the Zelthari to divide their attention. Owen Carter led a squadron in a high-speed run past the nearest destroyer, firing the entire way. The ship's shields held, but it had to turn to respond, breaking formation. Maria Santos exploited the gap immediately, her squadron diving through and launching torpedoes at the supply depot itself. The station wasn't heavily armored, relying on its defending ships for protection. When the torpedoes hit, massive explosions tore through storage bays filled with ammunition and fuel. Secondary detonations rippled across the structure. The Zelthari fleet commander panicked, ordering half his ships to protect the now-burning depot while the rest tried to engage the human fighters. It was exactly the wrong move. Jake brought the Retribution in fast, its railguns opening fire at maximum range. The depleted uranium slugs crossed the distance in seconds, slamming into a cruiser that had turned its attention to the fighters. The ship's shields collapsed under the kinetic barrage and follow-up shots punched through its armor. Greg, target the other cruiser. Danny, divert power from life support to weapons. We're ending this fast. The battle became a textbook example of human combined arms doctrine. The fighters kept the enemy scattered and defensive. The Retribution's long-range weapons picked off isolated targets, and when the Zelthari finally tried to regroup and mount a coordinated counterattack, Jake had already achieved his objective. The supply depot was destroyed and half the defending fleet was crippled or destroyed. The Retribution jumped out of the system before the enemy could organize a pursuit. They had been in combat for less than an hour, but the damage they inflicted would hamper Zelthari operations for months. It was a pattern they would repeat across a dozen systems, each time hitting hard and leaving before the enemy could respond. But humanity's strategy went beyond simple raids. Dr. Helen Price had made a breakthrough that would change the nature of space warfare. By studying captured Zelthari hyperspace technology, she developed a field generator that could prevent ships from entering or leaving hyperspace within a certain radius. If deployed correctly, it would trap enemy fleets and force them to fight on human terms. The first test came at the Battle of Kelvar Station, a Zelthari military installation near the border between their territory and neutral space. Ryan Blake commanded the assault personally, bringing 24 ships against a fortified position defended by 40 enemy vessels. On paper, the humans were outmatched. In reality, the battle was over before it began. Ryan's fleet dropped out of hyperspace outside the trap range and immediately deployed Helen's new devices. The Zelthari, confident in their superior numbers, advanced to engage. When they tried to retreat after realizing they were facing stiffer resistance than expected, they found they couldn't. The hyperspace field held them in place. "Now they're stuck in here with us," Ryan said calmly. "All ships free fire. Make them regret accepting those odds." The battle was brutal and one-sided. The Zelthari had more ships, but human vessels were built for brawling. Their armor was thicker, their weapons hit harder, and their crews had been forged in the fires of Earth's defense. Every captain knew what was at stake and fought with a ferocity that terrified the enemy. Sergeant Victor Hayes and Lieutenant Amy Rogers led boarding actions against crippled enemy ships. It was dangerous work, fighting through zero-gravity corridors against aliens who were physically stronger. But humans compensated with tactics, teamwork, and sheer aggression. They moved through enemy vessels like ghosts, appearing from unexpected directions and overwhelming defenders before they could react. The Zelthari Marines found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to revel in close combat. Humans used knives when their guns ran dry. They set traps in ventilation shafts. They turned the ship's own systems against their crews, venting atmosphere or cutting power at critical moments. It was psychological warfare as much as physical, breaking the enemy's will to fight. Within 6 months of Earth's defense, the war had turned decisively in humanity's favor. The Zelthari lost system after system, their fleets unable to counter human hit-and-run tactics or stand against them in direct combat. Their allies began questioning the wisdom of fighting the deathworlders. The Vrel withdrew their ships after losing a quarter of their navy in a single disastrous engagement. The Dulari sued for separate peace, offering reparations in exchange for neutrality. Nathan Cruz's intelligence network was equally effective on the civilian front. His agents broadcast messages throughout Zelthari space, targeting the Empire's population with the truth their government had hidden. They told them how the war started with an unprovoked attack. They showed footage of human cities destroyed by orbital bombardment. They asked a simple question: was this worth it? The propaganda campaign worked better than anyone expected. Protests erupted on Zelthari worlds. Military recruitment numbers plummeted. Some colonies simply refused to send more troops or resources. The Empire's unity began to fracture under the weight of a war they were losing. Jake Morrison became something of a legend during this period. The Retribution and its crew struck fear into Zelthari commanders, who learned that encountering the human carrier meant death or capture. Jake didn't revel in the destruction. Every battle reminded him of the people they had lost, the friends who died defending Earth. But he pressed on because the war had to end, and it would only end when the enemy could no longer fight. Lisa Grant evolved into one of humanity's best tactical pilots, her instincts in combat almost supernatural. Danny Walsh kept the Retribution running. The final human fleet assembled at the edge of Zelthari space, a force of 30 warships led by Admiral Ryan Blake aboard the newly commissioned battleship Valiant. Behind them stretched the logistics chain of a species that had learned war from necessity and perfected it through determination. Ahead lay Zelthari Prime, the homeworld of an empire that had made the mistake of believing humans would be easy prey. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the tactical display as their fleet prepared for what everyone hoped would be the last battle of the war. His crew was exhausted, running on determination and stimulants. They had been fighting for 8 months straight, never getting more than a few days' rest between operations. But they were ready for this, ready to end it. The Zelthari homeworld was defended by everything the Empire had left. Automated defense platforms ringed the planet, each bristling with enough firepower to destroy a cruiser. 36 warships patrolled in overlapping formations. Minefields and sensor nets covered every approach vector. It was the strongest defensive position humanity had faced, and breaking it would cost lives. Ryan opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Blake, I won't lie to you. This is going to be the hardest fight of the war. A lot of us probably won't make it home. But we're here to finish what the Zelthari started. We're here to make sure they never threaten Earth again. And we're here to show the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises. We said we would end this war, and today we're going to do exactly that." The fleet began its approach, moving in a formation that Patricia Cole had designed specifically for this assault. The ships were arranged in overlapping waves, each providing cover for the others while maintaining fields of fire on multiple targets. It was complex and required perfect coordination, but human crews had drilled on this maneuver for weeks. The Zelthari opened fire at maximum range, energy beams and missiles filling space with deadly light. The leading human ships took heavy fire, their shields flaring as they absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lesser vessels. But they pressed on, returning fire with their railguns and missile batteries. Owen Carter led the fighter assault, 300 human pilots diving toward the defense platforms. The automated systems tracked them with cold efficiency, point defense weapons creating a web of fire that nothing should survive. 20 fighters died in the first 30 seconds. But the rest pressed through, their pilots performing maneuvers that made the enemy targeting computers struggle to keep up. Owen's targeting system locked onto a defense platform, and he released his payload, 6 armor-piercing missiles that streaked toward the target. 5 were intercepted, but the 6th got through, punching into the platform's reactor. The explosion was massive, taking out 2 neighboring platforms in the chain reaction. "That's 1 down," Owen transmitted. 200 more to go. "Let's get to work, people." Maria Santos led another squadron against the enemy fleet, forcing them to split their attention between the approaching human capital ships and the fighters harassing their formation. It was exactly what Ryan needed. As the Zelthari spread out to counter multiple threats, gaps appeared in their defensive line. "All ships, push through. Target those cruisers holding the center formation. Break their line and we break their defense." The Valiant led the charge, its heavy armor absorbing hits that would have crippled lighter vessels. Greg Hamilton, commanding the ship's weapons, fired precisely timed volleys that overwhelmed enemy shields through sheer kinetic force. Danny Walsh, coordinating engineering teams across the fleet, kept damaged systems running through quick fixes and desperate improvisations. The battle devolved into chaos as human ships pushed into the defensive perimeter. It was a brawl in 3 dimensions, ships engaging at point-blank range where shields barely mattered, and armor was the only thing keeping crews alive. The Zelthari fought with desperate courage, knowing they were defending their homeworld, but human crews fought with something stronger. They fought with the memory of Earth burning, of friends who died in the defense, of an enemy who had refused every chance at peace. Jake brought the retribution against a Zelthari battleship that was coordinating the defense. Lisa Grant maneuvered them into position while taking fire from 3 directions. Alarms screamed as systems failed, but the ship held together long enough for Jake to get a shot. The carrier's main gun, a railgun that ran the length of the ship, fired a single massive slug. The projectile hit the enemy battleship's bridge, destroying it instantly. The ship went dark, its crew dead or stunned, and began drifting out of formation. Jake didn't feel triumph, just tired sadness. More death. More destruction. When would it end? It ended when a message came through on all frequencies, broadcast from the surface of Zelthari Prime. The Emperor himself appeared on screens across both fleets, his reptilian features showing exhaustion and defeat. "Human forces, this is Emperor Calthex. I am ordering all Zelthari military units to cease fire immediately. We surrender. Please, no more death. We were wrong to attack you. We were wrong about everything. I am prepared to accept any terms you offer if you will stop the killing." The human fleet held fire, though their weapons remained locked on targets. Ryan Blake opened a direct channel to the Emperor. "Evacuate your orbital defenses and recall your ships to parking orbits. Any vessel that moves aggressively will be destroyed. We'll discuss terms once your forces stand down." Over the next hour, the Zelthari military complied. Ships powered down weapons and retreated to designated areas. Defense platforms went dark. The humans maintained battle stations ready to resume fighting if this was some kind of trick. But the Emperor's surrender appeared genuine. President Marcus Reeves arrived 3 days later aboard a diplomatic vessel escorted by the battered remains of the fleet. He had insisted on coming personally to negotiate the peace despite security concerns. The signing of the treaty would take place aboard the Retribution, a deliberate choice to remind the Zelthari where they were and what they had tried to do. Emperor Calthex came aboard with a small delegation, his bearing defeated but dignified. Marcus met him in the conference room that had been hastily set up in one of the carrier's cargo bays. Around the table sat representatives from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had sent observers. Allied species that had helped humanity sent diplomats. Even the Eldurians had sent a representative, something they rarely did. "Emperor," Marcus began, his voice formal but not cruel. "Your empire attacked humanity without provocation, killed our people, and tried to conquer our world. By all rights, we could reduce Zelthari Prime to ash and take everything you have. But that's not who we are. We didn't come to the stars to become conquerors." He slid a document across the table. "These are our terms. The Zelthari Empire will surrender all territorial claims to the 7 disputed systems. You will pay reparations to human families who lost loved ones in the war. Your military will be limited in size and subject to inspection for 50 years. And you will accept human observers in your government to ensure you never start a war like this again." Calthex read the terms, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he looked up at Marcus. "These terms are harsh but fair. I expected worse. Why do you show mercy to those who showed you none?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Because we remember what it's like to be beaten. Earth's history is full of wars where winners tried to crush losers completely, and it always led to more war. We're ending this cycle, not continuing it. We want peace, real peace, where everyone can prosper, but make no mistake. If you or anyone else attacks humanity again, we will not show mercy twice. The Treaty of Terra was signed that day, formally ending the war. But Marcus had one more surprise. He proposed the creation of a galactic defense coalition, open to any species that wanted to join. Members would contribute ships and personnel to a joint fleet dedicated to preventing wars of aggression. The coalition would be commanded on a rotating basis by representatives from member species. We're offering to share our military knowledge, Marcus explained to the assembled representatives. Our tactics, our training methods, even our technology. Not because we want everyone to be like us, but because we believe that strength shared is strength preserved. If the galaxy is protected by all of us together, maybe we can prevent future wars before they start. The response was overwhelming. 12 species immediately signed up to join the coalition. Others requested time to consult their governments but indicated strong interest. The Zelthari surprisingly asked to join as well after their mandatory restriction period ended. They had learned the hard way what humanity already knew. Peace was precious and worth defending. 3 months after the treaty signing, Jake Morrison stood in a memorial garden on Earth. It was a beautiful place, with trees and flowers from across the planet surrounding a wall where names were carved. Names of everyone who died in the war. He found the section for his original crew, running his fingers over the letters. So many good people gone. Dr. Sophie Turner joined him, walking with a slight limp from injuries she sustained during the Battle of Terra. They stood in silence for a while, just remembering. Finally, Sophie spoke. Do you think it was worth it? All this death?